Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. My name is Josh, and today, this is actually a viewer requested video. Today, we're going to be cleaning the Channeled Alpha Beast by BRS. Alright, so I have a few things in front of me that we'll be using today. Some isopropyl alcohol. Typically, you'd want to use something above the 70 mark, or at least that's my preference. It seems to do a really good job. Some lubricant for your knife. I like to use these little bristle brushes here that they're not very abrasive, so it's not going to scratch the finish on your knife. And I got another one here that's a little bit smaller. And also a tool to unscrew the pivots. Typically it's a Torx screw, T10, typically. Before you get started, just make sure you have the proper tool for your knife. A couple of shop rags here as well. And the optional piece is some cardboard. You might actually want a little tray as well to keep all your parts in. So, for the CHAB, which a viewer requested on how to properly clean the CHAB, there's different methods for everybody, but this is what I do. You gotta squeeze the handles together, and then you put the Torx screw inside, and while you're squeezing the handles, you unscrew it lefty-loosey. Sometimes they can be a little bit more difficult to unscrew, especially if they're either Loctited or if you screwed them in too tight, over tightening. They can be a little bit difficult to take out. I personally don't use any Threadlocker, so it's super easy for me to unscrew them. I try to keep track of all my pieces and try not to mix them up. Like when I'm taking apart the OSP matrix, it's super important to take everything off and put it back together the same exact way. If you mix up any parts, sometimes that can cause tap or play, especially on the matrix, just because the matrix is tuned individually, so the washer's tuned, the bushing's tuned, and yeah, if you mix that up, you can experience tap or play. So to get the pivots out, I just take the tip of my Torx and poke it through. So this is the bite handle side. I'm going to keep that separate from the safe handle side. Then you just pull it out like that. Again, I'm going to keep the washers in the exact same order, so when I put it back together, bite handle washers will remain bite handle washers. Then you got your handle here. Put that off to the side. You can tell when it's the bite handle because it has the little latch hole, or a latch might actually be there. If you do have the latch still on your Balisong, just unscrew it. It's typically a different size than the T10, but take that out so you can clean inside the hole and clean the latch and all that stuff. Poke out the bushing. Make sure you don't lose that. Super important. And then same deal with this. Poke it through. Pull. Both of your washers will fall out sometimes. If your knife is well lubricated, just check on the inside because they tend to stick. And then these are my safe handle washers, which again will remain safe handle washers. Same thing with the bushing. Pop out that bushing and keep it separate from all the other ones. So when you put it back together, you know it's going to perform the same exact way as before you started cleaning it. Now, we got our blade, our safe handle, our bite handle. Excuse me. It's typically Well, what I usually do is I clean the big stuff first and then get on to the nitty gritty. So this is actually really self-explanatory. I have a rag right here. I got two separate rags. They're both dirty as hell. You could probably get away with just one rag, but whatever. My isopropyl alcohol. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this small brush here and dip the whole thing inside the rubbing alcohol. Put this on top of the rag because it could get a little messy. So I'm going to dip it, dipping the whole brush right on in there. You can see it's dripping wet. The thing I like about rubbing alcohol is you can really scrub, get all the grime out of the pivot area. You can really scrub and then it dries off really easily. And this gets all that nasty grime and everything out of the, especially out of the pivot area, but you know, sometimes buildup can get in these little grip pieces here or in this hole. And I just scrub the heck out of it from top to bottom or from bottom to top or wherever. You don't need to be super picky. And then I'll flip it over, do the same thing, dip. Get that pivot area really good, and just work your way down. I use this brush, but you could use a toothbrush. You could even use like a paper towel if you don't have any brushes hanging around. But most people have a spare toothbrush that they can sacrifice. And same deal with this side. You want to get in that cup area. Dip again. And just go to town on it. Go to town. If you have a light, it's nice to have like an overhead light where you can see where the problem areas are. Knife oil is usually the stuff that really gets all sticky and gunky in there. I'm gonna dip again, and this brush doesn't reach all the way to that bottom area, so I'm just trying to get it wet enough to where I can get in there with my other rag right here. I'm gonna take a corner of it, fold it up, and get in between. So I'm just sliding the rag on the inside there. Just like that, to get all that dust buildup out of there. Get all the hair. I chose a really bad rag for this. This rag has a bunch of hair in it. That's okay though. And then I'm just gonna dry it off real good. The isopropyl alcohol really does a good job. And then just buff out all the fingerprints and all that stuff. You can wear gloves if you don't want to get a lot of fingerprints on it too, but I usually don't mind too much. Nice and shiny. Then you're going to do the same with the other handle. I'll try to do it a little bit quicker. Get in the pivot area. Really scrub. Now this is the bite handle, so it has the latch bit right there. You want to get in that hole real good. Do it with every side. the inside wet. Folded cloth, and get all up in there. Try to get all that grime out. It gets really, really grimy on the inside because it's the channeled construction, so you're gonna get a lot of buildup in there. A lot of buildup of crud and just shit that accumulates in there. And I'm just gonna grab it and get it dried off real good. Like that. Get all the fingerprints off of it. If you wanted, you could also, sometimes I use Windex. Windex works really good for titanium. And there it is, there's the other one. Some of this stuff can just be buffed out with your hand too. If you notice anything, you can just buff it out. Now for the blade. Same deal with the blade. Dip the brush or whatever. Now, the blade usually has a lot of oil on it from the pivot area. You're gonna really want to get in there, in those holes. Around the pins. And then when it comes to the blade on the sharp side, I just go downwards with the brush. Sometimes sideways too, but typically downwards because it's sharp and you don't want to cut your brush all up. Just like that. Same on the other side. Just get in the pivot area really good. Try to get all the corners. And then nice downward motion. If you want to get the sides, same deal, just like you're brushing your teeth or something. Side to side, side to side, side to side. Side, 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 side. This is a good way of cleaning it too if you're prepping it for an anodizing mod. If you anodize metal, or you're sending it off to be anodized, it's a good way to clean it. If you are using it for that method, you're definitely going to want gloves. If you don't have gloves and you're attempting to anodize, any little fingerprint will show if you don't wear gloves. Alright, same deal with this. Dry it off real good. When it comes to the sharp side, I usually just pinch it, pull. Just like that. And you can check in the light, see if you missed anything. Up here is just staining on the blade, so I can't get that off. Looks pretty good. Drier than a bone too. I really like rubbing alcohol because it dries it out. And that's why I usually suggest having another knife oil, which, let me check. Okay, so I did find the oil. This is just some general purpose stuff. And I also grabbed some Loctite, just so I can show you when to apply it. Alright, where was I? I found another brush too. This one's a little bit deeper. So that would be a good example of getting way deep inside the handles and just brushing all that crap out of there. But yeah, that's, you can use a Q-tip, cloth, really you can use anything you want. So now it's time for the small stuff. I'm gonna start with the bite handle bushing. Same deal. Dip some rubbing alcohol. And just get all the lube, and if there's any sand or dust in there, just scrape it out. And then you can dry it using the rag. And it should be nice and clean. Put that back in the pile. Safe handle. Scrub it. Again, you really want to be careful not to use a brush that's abrasive. A lot of brushes are made from some sort of metal. If you're using a wire brush of any type, you're doing it wrong. Don't do that. Because if you scratch the bushings, that's just going to be a whole bunch of other problems that are really difficult to fix. Wipe it off. Nice and clean, nice and clean. You're pretty much going to do the same thing for each piece of hardware. Got the washer there. Scrub, scrub, scrub. Get it all nice and clean. The washers tend to get real dirty, especially if you're applying lube on a regular basis. One thing you could do, which I should have mentioned this a while back, is you can take the cap of your isopropyl alcohol, dump it in there, and then one at a time just fill this up with rubbing alcohol and just dip your parts in it, let them sit while you're cleaning the handles or something. And then while you're cleaning these, say it's for the safe handle, when you're scrubbing it away, you can put the bite handle ones in there and let those soak for a while. But really, that's up to you. Depends on how clean you want it, I guess. Dry it off, drop it. Same deal with this. I'm going to do it with every single part that we have. Dry it off. Put it to the side. Now, for the pivots. Same deal, except for me, I like getting really deep in there and actually like poking the bristle brush in there, twisting it, getting all that gunk out of there. If you have Threadlocker, it's really gunked up in there. I recommend getting a paper towel and just kind of threading the paper towel in there. But where I don't apply Threadlocker, we should be all set. Dry it off. Throw it to the side. Same thing with the screw. You're going to do the same exact thing. Get all in the Torx area. Get in the screw area really good. Now, this is just my way of cleaning. Everybody has a different method that works better for them. This is just the way I do it. There's really no right or wrong way. The only wrong way is if you use an abrasive. Definitely don't use Scotch pads or anything like that. You'll scratch the hell out of it. this a little wet again and dry it off. Throw it to the side. I can't remember if I did these washers, so I'm gonna just do it real quick. You can always tell what direction the washer was facing just by looking at it. You'll see a center ring inside of it that is just a little bit shinier than the outside, and that's because the bushing is sitting up against it, kind of like that. So you can tell that that's the side that's facing the bushings or the blade or whatever, however you want to put it. Dry them puppies off, throw it to the side, and pivot, pivot, pivot. Okie dokie. Now, for the assembly process. Get my bite handle, my blade. Now, I like to do this completely dry. Some people will throw the bushing in there and, apply a little bit of oil on the outside. I like to keep it dry. That's just me. So you plop the bushing in there, put a washer on each side of the blade, like that, kind of pinch it together. Take your bite handle, one with the latch, make sure it's facing in the appropriate direction so when you close it, it's on the right side, because you can get this reversed and it's a pain in the ass. I've done it before. If you get it reversed like this and you go to close it, it's gonna obviously not close and potentially chip your edge. So we're gonna throw that in there like that. Grab your torque screw and kind of dance it around like that, because you want it to be perfectly in line. And usually it doesn't work the first time. I like having the torque screw side on the same side as the BRS logo. It's really hard to see the BRS logo on this one, but you can take my word for it. I'm just gonna insert it like that, put my torques in there, and then just dance around until it's perfectly lined up. Sometimes it's a pain in the ass, sometimes it's easy, but you're just trying to get everything lined up, just like that. Grab your screw, drop it in there. Oops. Drop it in there like so. You're gonna stand it up and twist left until you hear that click. Once you hear that click, you can screw it in a little bit. That is protecting you from potentially cross-threading. If you cross-thread, you basically ruined your pivots. And I just screw it in enough to where, it's in, it's not gonna fall out. So same thing with the other side. I got my bushing. I'm gonna plop it in there. Take my washers, pinch one on each side. If I can pick it up. Come on. Pinch one on each side, just like that. Try to line it up real good. Grab the handle, this is the safe handle, and just work the handle in there. Sometimes it's kind of tight. If it looks a little crooked, you can carefully push it over a little bit. just like this. You don't really want to scratch your blade up. And do the dance. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Sorry for my dirty ass nails. I work as a machine operator, and a lot of that gunk just gets up in my nails and on my hands. And I put the Torx bit in there. You can see it's kind of like assisting the pivot. Like if I push that out, you can see that pretty much I'm trying to guide the pivot barrel through the hole. And then just dance around until it goes through. It's almost there. Almost there. You want to make sure it goes all the way through, like that. You'll know. And then take the screw. I like putting it on the flat surface because you guys can really hear it click. Put the screw in there, twist it to the left till you hear the click. See? Just like that. I'll do it one more time. And then twist it to the right. And that just helps the screw get properly threaded. So now that you got it together, squeeze the handles, twist to the right. When you start feeling some resistance, go a little bit slower. Until it gets to the point where it doesn't want to screw in no more. Same thing with the other side. I'm pinching the back and then just twisting, twisting, twisting. Once it starts giving you some resistance, you can slow down a little bit and then it's properly screwed in. Good time to check the handle play. Not too bad, not too bad. If you need to screw it in a little bit more, you can. Kind of adjust as needed. Test the handle swing. I know the camera's kind of low, but all I'm doing is letting it go like that, making sure it's not sticking. If the handles swing nice and freely, sometimes I like putting it like this and then just pulling it up like that on each side. If it's sticking, it'll pull the blade up. You know, if it's pulling the blade up, loosen up the pivots a little bit. Shit, I forgot to tell you when to apply the thread locker. You would apply the thread locker prior to screwing it in. There's some awesome tutorials on how to apply this stuff. You can use something like the top of a cap here. Put just a tiny dab like that. Oh, you can't see the cap. Sorry. Put a tiny dab in the center. A little bit goes a long way. And you will take the screw, pinch it with your finger, and then just dip the tip of the screw inside the thread locker, and then be very careful and follow my instructions on how to screw it in. So sorry about that. I didn't mean to miss it. So once it's back together, a lot of times I'll take my oil. This is one that extends, but whatever. And bloop, a little bit goes a long way. I'll take my finger, just apply it all over. Just like that. Same deal with the other side. Just a little bit. And you can do this when the handles are off the knife as well, but I like doing it while it's on so I can just focus on the problem areas. And then just work the oil all around. You really don't need to apply more than one dab for the handles. Just work it on in there. This stuff works really good. really makes it shine. Makes it shine really nice. If you want to, you can kind of rub it on the inside too. And then you'll want to do the blade. I usually start towards the top. A little bit, just a little dab will do you. And then work it onto the blade. Doing the same stuff as with the bristle brush. Just going from top to bottom, because if you go the other way, you risk getting cut. Yeah. Get all up in there. Which you can apply this with a Q-tip too if you really wanted to, but it's not my preference. I'm using oil from the other side. You don't really need to apply too much. Just enough to make it shine. Matter of fact, what I did is probably a little bit too much, but you can kind of spread it out along the knife. Just like that. Same deal with the pin area. Just get it all up in there. And then just work it on the knife. Work it, work it, work it. If you feel it necessary, you can wipe a little bit off with the cloth, but I applied just enough to where it's not too slippery. Now, what you want to do, put the cap back on the lube, or technically this is oil, not lube. Same difference. Grab a lubricant, a pivot oil of your preference. This stuff works pretty good. It's nice and loose. I've done a review on it if you want to check it out. And just dab it on in there. Dab it on in there. I'm not even squeezing the bottle. I'm just putting it in there by dabbing it. Just like this. Dab, dab. That is probably more than enough. And make sure your handles are still swinging freely. Kind of work that oil in there, the pivot oil. Sometimes I pick it up and do one of those. That's another good way of testing if your handles are binding at all, is just by bouncing it, and eventually they should bounce at the same rate. Just like that. That's all I do. Nice loose handles that are swinging freely, and they both bounce at the same time. If they don't, that means that one of the handles has a little bit more resistance than the other, and you either need to adjust the pivot area, diagnose the problem. But that's about what it should look like. As long as you can eventually get it here, that's all you need. It might start off a little rocky, but that's just one way that I test it. Again, you can test it just by doing that. If it feels good, that's all that matters. Other than that, oh, you know what? Here's a little bonus tip for you guys. If you want to keep your edge nice and sharp, and you're already working with an edge that's pretty sharp, like this edge is already pretty sharp, it doesn't need sharpened. A lot of times, I learned this from a buddy. Put some oil on some cardboard if you don't have a strop. And same deal. Work the oil all over the cardboard. And, you can really get it all. You can apply a decent amount. Just like that. Rub it all in there. And what you're going to do is let it sit overnight. You're going to let this cardboard sit overnight. When you wake up in the morning, the flatter the better. I was just choosing this for an example. And then, as you would a strop, just work that edge. But again, this cardboard is not very good because it's not very flat. I should have done the other side, but this is just an example. And that will keep your edge really, really razor sharp. I wish I chose a better piece, but yeah, that's just a little bonus tip for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave it a like and a comment. Share it with anybody that you think would enjoy this information. And as always, I appreciate you guys, and I hope to see you next time. Adios.